Hello and welcome to Talk the Block, the podcast where we talk about the hit HGTV show, Rock the Block. I'm Amy and I'm lucky to be here with my wonderful co-host, Stephen. How you doing today, Stephen?
I'm fantastic. Fantastic.
Some of these
no shower niches I had to look at this week. No outlet covers to critique.
Yeah, what did you do? I mean, it's really quite boring.
I just enjoyed the outside.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say, right off the bat, I found this episode to be a little bit on the boring side. In fact, I had to
Slept
watch
through it twice.
I did.
We watched the thing 3 times.
3 times in order to not fall asleep. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, is it just the backyards that are boring? But I think they were so similar this year. I mean, last year we had one backyard that was a moonscape with a casita. We had another full of grass with an in-ground trampoline and a swing and everything.
Right.
We had one with a giant-sized pickleball court.
Right.
And then we had one with a goat pen.
That's right. Yeah. Goat pen, yeah.
So last year we had like 4 very different sort of, visions for what the backyard should be.
It was more similar to what they did in Florida, because everybody got a pool in Florida, right? So from that standpoint, that in Florida, but then even in Florida, they did things differently.
Yeah, I felt there was more variety in Florida, even though most of the backyard was a pool. What they did underneath that covered porch was very different for each one. So I just felt like, it was really hard, for one thing, to stay awake through this episode. For a second thing, to really get a good sense for how each backyard differed from the other ones. Because they all kind of blended together. And that's part of the reason we had to watch the episode 3 times, just to make sure that, we really understood what was different from one backyard to the next one.
Yeah, and it was really the judging is what we watched. We watched that 3 times, so.
Yeah. But anyway, we've got it now.
Yep. We know why a couple of teams lost.
Yeah, we definitely
narrowed it down to two teams and that did well, and 2 teams that
had some pretty major problems. Yeah. So before we get into what they did with the houses, they did sort of a fun challenge at the beginning of the house, where they did pool roulette, so to speak. Woohoo! So Tyler was out there with the roulette wheel, and depending on what number you got on the roulette wheel, you would either get one of 4 plungy pools, or you'd get the chance to steal the pool or lose a turn. Now, plungy pools, we are actually familiar with this product because we are considering putting a plungy pool in our yard.
Yep.
So they are basically self-contained pools on the smaller side. They come in circular or rectangular shapes, and they can either be put above ground or partially submerged or almost fully submerged, really depending on what you want to do with them, right? And we got a quote to get one of the circular plungy pools put in our backyard. Yeah. Now, we live on a steep hill, so this would require like a crane. To bring it in. But the total cost that was estimated for us to get one of these plungy pools, actually install it and put the decking around it, was like $125,000 or something like that.
Somewhere in the 125, 150 range. I was trying to find my quote. I found the plungy brochure.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I couldn't find the quote.
Quite expensive. So we have not pulled the
trigger on that sucker.
Pulled the trigger on the plungy pool. But that just tells you this is a pretty significant value that they're offering these people.
Yeah.
Now they did look like their plungy pools came in on cranes too. But relatively flat yards, so probably was a little bit easier.
Yeah, they were talking about all the sort of weighting and stuff they would need to do with the crane in order to keep the crane level while they were trying to lower the pool down to our yard. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of a more complicated process. Mm-hmm. But it's not just a pool and sitting it in your yard and getting it craned in there. There's all of the things that go along with it, the plumbing that goes along with the electrical, the filters, all of that stuff too. You don't really see that, but that has to go somewhere, which is interesting. I'm not sure I saw where like the pool filters were, because we were looking for the HVAC stuff today too to make sure to where they were at, because we were seeing more of the yards, and we finally did. I mean, that's another reason why we kind of had to watch it a couple times, but
I'm
not sure what they did with the filter. And then there's the question of whether it's saltwater or freshwater pools too.
I think they're saltwater. It
Well, the
probably
one we
says
were-
on the plungy.
Well,
brochure.
we could get either way.
Yeah.
They said we could go either way.
Okay, yeah, they didn't specify
They didn't
that.
specify.
But anyway, I would say that this was a value add of at least $80,000
Significant.
to $100,000
Yeah.
by the time they
Yeah.
all was said and done. So
Right.
nice benefit for the teams.
Yeah. It's something they're not really going to call out when they do the evaluations at the end, I think, because they're going to say, oh, your starting value was $1.9 million and you used a budget of $275,000, and now your result is your added amount is this. Part of that added amount is going to be this pool.
Yeah, for sure. That's
Yeah.
going to add value.
But I don't think they're going to call it out.
We'll see. But in our accounting, we will do
our
that for
accounting,
you.
that's
This is
right.
this is a service we offer to our listeners. So anyway, I just want to go through really quickly what pool each team ended up with and whether they got the one that they wanted. So Scott and Brooke wanted pool number 2. One of the pools was a smaller rectangular that had spa jets. And that's the one that Scott and Brooke wanted. But instead, they got the smaller pool that had pool tile, which I think is like the worst thing to get, because even though the tile looked cool, they actually had to install the tile. So it was like more work for the value. Mina and Vernon wanted the big pool because, as Mina said, and this is the name of the episode, sometimes size matters. However, they won the round pool, and it turned out that the round pool was 2 round pools. So I think they got a pretty good value there, because the 2 round pools were approximately the same size as the big pool, and it did look kind of cool to have the 2 round pools in their backyard.
Yeah, actually, just from looking at the brochure here, the round pool, 2,375 gallons. So they basically would have had like 4,700 gallons of water versus the plungy original, the 15 by 8, which there was 2 of those. That's 3,280. So
But
the
they
2
wanted-
round pools are actually bigger than the 15 by 8s that Scott, Brooke, and
But they're not as big as the large pool.
No, the plungy max is 53.
Yeah.
53.35.
So it was not quite as much water as those,
But big,
still.
but more than the 15 by 8s.
Yeah. I think at the end they were happy with that. So Kim and Chelsea wanted the round pool. However, that was already taken by Mina and Vernon, and they did not get the steal a pool option. So they ended up with the 20 by 10 pool.
But they did lose a turn.
They did lose a
They did
turn,
lose
but
a
they
turn.
ended up with the biggest pool, which actually I think benefited them. I think having that big pool was one of the things that was a factor in their winning. So they may be lucky that they didn't get what Chelsea originally wanted, because as we know, what Chelsea wants
Yeah.
doesn't usually
Chelsea
work
wants
out.
is a losing idea. Yeah.
And so Taniya and Drew got the 15 by 8 pool with the spa jet add-on, and that's the one they wanted. So they were happy with that.
Yeah, and we were, really looking at, we spent a lot of time looking at the layouts of these, because 2 of the homes are, the backyards are rectangular or square. Kim and Chelsea, Scott and Brooke on the front end of the cul-de-sac, their yards are all fairly regular. But Mina, Vernon, and Taniya and Drew would have rectangular or triangular backyards. So that kind of, that's what you really kind of see that with when you saw Taniya and Drew's overhead. They had that square pool in that the triangular backyard, which, because Mina and Vernon got the round ones, I think it worked out pretty well. But if Mina and Vernon or Taniya and Drew had gotten that plungy max, the 20 by 10, I think it would have looked really weird.
I don't know. There's probably a way they could have done it. But
you hope so. I hope so.
I do think the round pools looked very good in that irregular backyard. So Mina and Vernon were kind of lucky that that's what they ended up with.
Right.
Yeah.
And to your point, we haven't got to it, but just, kind of prefacing how these backyards looked, they, when we were seeing the view of them, they kind of looked like they were expansive. I think that when we get there, we're going to find out that these backyards are not as big as they appear on TV. kind of like your rear view side mirror,
Exactly.
with the dinosaur in it.
That is one thing that we really noticed last year when we were in Utah. The size of the spaces looked dramatically different.
Yeah, they had those backyard, the views of those backyards, they looked on TV, they look ginormous.
They look ginormous, but I bet they're not so ginormous when we're actually there. So, and actually at this time next week, we will be touring the houses in Las Vegas. So,
yeah, that's right. So there's next Saturday, Sunday, there is a May 30th, 31st, from 9 to 6. The houses are open. They're selling tickets this year. If you go to the landonmiller.com website, there'll be a pop-up where you can buy your ticket for it, and basically you set your entry, your 2-hour entry zone. I don't know that you're required to leave, but the times that you get there. And so the times go from 9 to 6 on Saturday and Sunday. It's a $5, basically a $5 donation to Homemade of Southern Nevada. I think I've got that right.
I think Homemade was the charity last year too.
That was
if I'm
it?
not
Okay.
mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have to buy tickets last year, but this year they're making us make a contribution.
Okay. So anyway, maybe we'll see some of you there. We'll be wearing our Talk the Block regalia. So if you see us at this tour next week, stop by and say hi. All right, so now that we've been through the pool, before we go into the backyard, Stephen, let's take a super quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, so let's dig into what the teams did with these backyards. So as we say, there was not a ton of variety, and maybe part of that is because they had to put a pool in, but I think part of it was there just wasn't a ton of imagination in terms of what they did with these yards. I mean, there were little things sort of on the edges that they did that differentiated them, but generally they all had a two-sided fireplace, they all had an outdoor kitchen. Most of them had a pool deck with one noticeable exception, and they had yards with furniture in them. There just wasn't a lot of really unique features. I guess Kim and Chelsea did have that bocce ball court, which was something that was, you could say was a value add. But anyway, well, before we talk about overall, let's dive in to the first house. And Stephen, I'm going to start with the two that we felt were out of the running for winning. And then we'll talk about the two that we felt were sort of at the higher level. So let's go ahead and start with Taniya and Drew.
Yeah, so the other thing to call out here is that some of the teams did, the side yards was kind of the question whether or not it got addressed this week. And some of the side yards next to the ones that were up in the front of the cul-de-sac, Kim and Chelsea and Scott and Brooke, it seemed like the side yard that went by the RV garage was very narrow. So I don't think that there was any sort of concern placed to that one. But on the other side, they did do some sort of
They had
work.
a bigger yard.
They had a bigger yard, did something. And versus the Taniya and Mina houses that were, since they were triangular, there was room on both sides.
Yeah, they had two side yards that basically needed designing.
Yeah. So a little bit different challenge for the two sets of teams.
Okay. So do you want to do, maybe I'm going to change my mind here. Maybe we'll do the two triangular shaped yards and then we'll do the two rectangular shaped yards.
Yeah, I think that might go flow a little bit better because it would be similar yards. Yeah, from that standpoint. Yeah.
All right, so I'm changing midstream.
Taniya and Drew still go first.
But we're still doing Taniya and Drew, Livable Lux, and they are one that had a cul-de-sac yard, so it was more triangular shaped.
Yeah.
So Stephen, what was your view of Taniya and Drew's yard?
Staging. Bad staging. It was just bad staging after a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But there wasn't a whole lot that I liked. I did not like the shower. I liked that they said that they were going to put the wood on the pool and then they put it on one side and they only put the tile or the stonework on one side and it didn't even kind of wrap around to where the entry to the pool was. And And then the entry to the pool was not on the same side as the cabana or the pool lounge area. It was to me, it was. Yeah, I know why they lost.
I think there were a number of missteps in their house. So to me personally, the biggest, most egregious error they made was not having a pool deck. The pool was sort of only semi-submerged, so it was a little bit above ground. And they had steps going up to it, but there was no deck around it. You had to actually walk down steps, walk down a path, and walk over to sort of the turf area where they had some lounge chairs. But, most people like to have a deck by their pool with a couple of lounge chairs so they can get out of the pool, relax, jump back in. There was really no good way to sit by the pool and relax in this particular setup. So I thought that was a huge miss. And you are right. They only really decorated the front of the pool facing the house with the wood trim. So the other sides were just concrete. So had they had a deck or something, you wouldn't have seen that. But as it were, it looked unfinished to me.
Yeah, and just looking at the budget numbers, they were saying that they were going to spend about $30,000. I'll be interested to see, next week if it turns out that they didn't spend that much, because we were looking at this trying to figure out where they spent the money. Mm-hmm. They did have that outdoor kitchen that was next to the house, but that looked okay. I mean, but, then they had a seating area that didn't match it that was next to it. And I guess you did have a couple of seats on the other side of the outside kitchen.
Well, the biggest problem,
just not sure where they spent their money.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know where the money went. I mean, I did think missing a deck was a big problem. And then I think the second biggest problem they had is the outdoor kitchen was not covered at all.
Right.
There was no pergola, no roof, no nothing. And, I understand that Vegas gets pretty hot.
Yeah.
So you've got sort of a bar area where people could sit, but they would be roasting there by that outdoor kitchen. And I just don't understand why they didn't think of doing something with that.
Yeah. It was even right next to the house, so they could have had the top of it kind of stuck on the house. And as you mentioned, there's no lighting. And even though their house was a little weird because, they have the sliding doors there. They added the sliding doors right at the end, and so that they could put that outdoor kitchen right there next to it and have the sliding doors. There was only light on either. You expect to find lights on either side of those doors. There's only lights on one side, and it's on the side opposite from the kitchen. I'm sure even if it had that outdoor lighting, it wouldn't be enough to light up the kitchen area. But no lights in any of these. So there was no
lighting over the outdoor kitchen
in any of the outdoor kitchens. Yeah. No lighting.
Well,
I guess it never gets dark in Vegas.
Yeah, but anyway, so that was another miss in my perspective. Yeah. They did what everybody else did. They did a double fireplace between the two porches. So there was a porch off the kitchen, a covered porch off the kitchen, and a covered porch off the main bedroom. And there was a double-sided fireplace. And I think TVs on both sides. Yep. And some random staging in there. I think they did have ceiling fans in that covered area.
They did,
which was good.
They had one big fan in the larger seating area and one fan in the right off the master. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, one thing they did that none of the other teams did was having an outdoor shower, which is theoretically a good idea. You're coming in, you're dusty, having the outdoor shower. Like I say, it's hot in Vegas. You might want to just cool off. And some people like to shower if they'd had a chlorine pool. Who knows what kind of pool they had. But some people like to shower after they get out of the pool and rinse off.
Right.
So I think theoretically this wasn't a bad idea, but I don't think it was particularly well executed. What did you think?
No, there was. I couldn't figure out whether it was supposed to be a rain shower or not because it stuck out from the wall, but then it wasn't a rain shower and it didn't really stick out far enough to be a rain shower. So I didn't really see the point. But then they did two sides in wood and one side was open, and it felt like even if you're the only one there. It would have been having some sort of entryway into it.
Or a curtain or something.
A curtain or something to kind of provide a little bit of privacy. And again, that, curtain would be easily remediable. But I think instead of just having the stucco, if they were going to do the wood on two sides, that they could have brought the wood paneling across the area there where the house was, and it would have looked cohesive instead of looking like, here's your house and here's something that got stuck onto it.
Yeah, I agree, Stephen. The fixtures for the shower just sticking out of the stucco wall just looked kind of weird. I mean, had they tiled that or put wood there or something like they did for the rest of the shower, it would have just had a more finished look.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, there's no drain, so the water is going somewhere. And it didn't look like it was angled or anything, so I think the water is just going to run wherever the water wants to go, which could be back into the area where people are sitting, or I don't know. It's going to go somewhere. Water. Yeah. It's not gonna just fall into that nice planter there in the middle. Because I'm not sure why they stage a plant in the middle of the shower, but they did. Well, actually, I think there were two plants because they had the plant in the middle, and then they had like a stool on the side with a towel and I think a potted plant. It was just I don't get the staging.
The plant staging was a little odd. And then they had a big, comfy couch in the middle of the yard, which the judge loved. But I was like,
it looks like it just get hot.
Who wants to sit in this big, white, comfy couch in Vegas sun? I mean, no umbrella or anything. Yeah. It didn't feel right.
No, it looked clunky.
And then at the other end of the yard, they had a little pergola. One pergola. It's the only place they chose to actually shade. Yeah. No shade on the pool, no shade on the outdoor kitchen, but there was shade on the fire pit for some reason. So yeah, the fire
pit, which was next to the hot tub that they couldn't use in the RV garage. So now they stuck that out. So yet another different color, another different type of wood, another different color. Just there was no cohesion. Had the orange pergola that was there by the black glass roll-up door for the RV garage, which is next to the oak hot tub, which was next to the red or the kind of maroon wood they used for the shower, and then the house was gray. I mean, it just nothing looked like it was supposed to go together. It just.
Yeah, I did like having the hot tub there, outside
a good spot
the main
for
suite,
it.
And I didn't mind. I mean, I'm not a big fan of those big wood barrel hot tubs, but I guess, it was nice to have it.
Yeah, it seemed to fit in the space pretty well.
And then I don't think they did anything with the big side yard because you could kind of see it looked empty and unfinished, and they never went into it and looked at it.
No, on one side, the outdoor kitchen blocked going to the side room, and then on this side, kind of the pergola was sitting there kind of to say, hey, look at the pergola. Don't look at the side yard we did nothing with. So they kind of... So I'm not exactly... It'll be interesting to see how all this looks when we get there in person. But it kind of looked like they just ignored all that space.
And to your point, they spent as much as the other teams, but they didn't finish the side yard. They didn't put pergola. I'm not sure where the money went. They did have some nice plants, some nice leafy trees that will provide shade in the future. So those aren't cheap. So maybe they spent more money on landscaping than the other teams did. That's quite possible because Scott and Brooke tried to steal their trees at one point because their trees were so much better than the Charlie Brown team trees that Scott and Brooke got. So maybe that's where their money went, but they weren't getting the credit for it. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see whether they get credit for that when the Property Brothers are there.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So we did not think that Taniya and Drew had a winning backyard. That
was the worst one, I thought. Hands down, bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, just too many missteps and not cohesive in terms of what they did. So we will take a break, and then we will come back and talk about the other sort of triangular backyard, Mina and Vernon. Okay, so I really liked what Mina and Vernon did, and I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't win because they really designed 3 different yards, and they had put some good thought into all 3 of them.
Yeah.
And I thought they didn't make the design missteps that the prior team did. I thought most of their things were pretty well thought. So I really... I don't know. If I were the judge, I might have given it to them. Now, we'll see what we feel when we see it in person.
Yeah.
But on TV, I thought they did a great job.
Well, I think where they missed was, they had another full kitchen. And so not having the studio built on top of the pergola to be rented out.
Yeah, they could have added another bedroom
in the backyard.
Yeah, so that would have really given it to
That would have put them over the top. Yeah.
But speaking of another bedroom, so if you recall from last week, they turned their RV garage into a studio apartment.
Yep.
So what they decided to do, they had a pretty sizable side yard next to the RV garage, the way their lot was laid out. And they actually put a fence up there between the main backyard and where the RV garage was, and created a separate yard for the people who were using that studio apartment to enjoy. And they did a nice job. They sort of set that off from the street with a row of cypress trees. And then they put pavers up to where the cypress trees were to kind of, I believe, to give sort of a parking spot to the people that had that apartment. So you could have parked on the paver, walked over past those cypress, and had an entry to your apartment that didn't look like just a door pasted onto the side of a garage. It really felt more like, hey, this is a home that you're going into.
Yeah.
So I thought this really did do a decent job of completing their vision of a studio apartment in the garage. What did you think, Stephen?
Oh yeah, I thought it looked pretty good. They had a corner pergola. I don't know about that tic-tac-toe thing that they had thrown in the yard, which was kind of bad staging. And then they had a fence that separate or would a fence between the RV yard and the backyard. So that kind of creates that space. So yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. And then they had some decent sitting. They had that little bitty grill.
Yeah, little grill.
In this particular case, they had that little fire feature beside the door coming out, which I thought looked good. Kind of weird place to put it right by the door, though, now I'm thinking about it. But I did like it there. We didn't like it where it was in their back, because they had one in the RV side and one on the other side.
It sort of shaped the entry area, having that rectangular fire pit. Yeah. Although it is a good point, Stephen. Would you really want fire there? Like it's not like you're sitting around the fire. The fire is right by your house.
Yeah. But no, as far as defining the space, defining the entryway, that was kind of nice, but it being a fire feature seemed kind of a little
maybe a
weird.
Flower box would have been a better
choice.
Something like that.
Yeah, flower. Yeah, I think so. I think, and then they staged that little grill there by the door, which I guess staging's important. I think one of the other teams didn't do any staging in their side yard and got dinged for it.
Yeah.
And so I thought in general the RV side looked good. I think they did a really good job there. Yeah.
No. Now, let's just talk about their other side yards. So they had this type of lot has two side yards, and they also chose to do something deliberate with the other side yard.
Right.
So what did you think about their choices for the non-RV side yard?
Interesting. They had the HVAC stuff there, and so fortunately they got closed in with wood. But especially if they made it into a dog park, so if you have your dogs running around, you don't have those cables, wires, and stuff for the dogs to chew on. So blocking that off is smart. Although, I don't know, a bigger dog might still find their way in there, but probably could get out too. I thought. Just as far as it being a multifunction little space, I think that is a good idea. I was not impressed with the grass, this artificial grass that they used in everybody's homes.
It was not the highest quality artificial glass I've ever seen.
It looked awful.
Yeah. We'll see what it looks like in person, but there's some really nice artificial grass out there, and I'm not sure if that's what they use for this house. But the dog park, at first I was like, dog park, if you don't have a dog, why do you need this? But in essence, it was just a turfed, sort of minimally landscaped yard, and they put some kind of obstacles and games for the dogs back there to give it a little character. If you didn't have a dog, you still could have used that space, right?
Yeah, and that's what they pointed out. I mean, you just take that, and that stuff wasn't like it was even heavy, but you just take it out, and then if you want it to be a place where your kids can kind of run around, play soccer or
you could put a
lacrosse or
swing
something
set
like
over
that, or a
there,
swing
something
set,
like that. And
trampoline.
it was fenced off from the pool area, right? So if you wanted to sort of, you could have that locked and have that fence there and let your kids go out there and play in the swing set. And not worry about them, running into the swimming pool, right? So I thought, it was staged as a dog park. It was cute as a dog park. But if you didn't have a dog, there was interesting things you could have done with it.
Yeah, and then they did have some seating, and they had a pergola, the 7,000 part pergola that was over there. So a place for people to sit if they were going to watch the dogs play or watch the kids play. So I think that was for something that kind of a throwaway the side yard. I think they did a good job.
Yeah, they gave it some character, and I don't think I think they made those dog obstacles, so I don't think it cost them a great deal. I mean, it looked like they showed them making it, right? Whether they made it or a production assistant, it's hard to tell.
Yeah. I think Mina seems to be pretty competent with the old machinery there, so I think she would probably do a pretty bang-up job making stuff like that. Vernon's contribution, the support, hold down the thing, hold up the pergola while it's being made, test to make sure it's high enough. I mean, but yeah, I think those little bitty things that they made, I think easily fall in Mina's wheelhouse. She probably wouldn't even be half awake to get that done. No problem there.
Okay, so moving along to the main show, the main backyard. As we said before, they won the 2 round pools, and they chose to put those in the part of the triangle with the greatest area. And the way they staged those, I thought it was really nice. They had one pool probably 2 feet higher than the other pool, and they had a little spout so water followed off from one pool into the other pool.
Right.
And they did have decking around both pools, so there was plenty of decking there.
And stage seating.
I thought that looked pretty good.
Yeah, when we were seeing scenes of the pool running, it looked like the pool that was flowing into the other pool was wet. So I'm questioning how much of how much the spout goes over the other pool. It was kind of hard to tell. I think that they might have been a misjudgment on how far to stick that out. Or it might be a safety issue. They couldn't stick it out any further. I don't know. But otherwise, the concept was good. And the decking looked nice. And except for, as the judge pointed out, there being no sort of covered relief area from the sun, I think they did a really good job. And given the odd shape of the backyard, the 2 pools, I think, was definitely the winning.
Yeah, I mean, they could have put a pergola up there next to the pool, but I actually think, in that case, if I bought that house, I would just get, a really big umbrella and just put an umbrella up on that top deck that had room for people to sit under. And that would provide shade. I think that would have been good.
Yeah. The outdoor TV
they had a TV by the pools, kind of weirdly placed,
Yeah, because, because it's kind of like visually you could see it from the outdoor kitchen, but not really because it's across the whole thing. And especially, as was pointed out, it not having any cover, I think there'd be a lot of glare coming off the TV. So I'm not exactly sure how functional that would be. And as you pointed out, none of these TVs were wired. So
they were all staging TVs, all staging. I think,
TV, you get a TV. There's a TV here. There's a TV there.
And
Everybody gets a TV.
Vernon
There's a TV everywhere.
He really likes his TVs because he wanted a TV everywhere, which is, I can relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, all the teams had, all the patios for all the teams had TVs. I mean, it was, TV bonanza.
Yeah, definitely watch the game while you're out in your backyard.
Yeah.
So, speaking of pergolas, so one of the things that I liked about what they did is they used their winning money from the prior week to buy 2 powered pergolas in which you could, have the slats go up to let sun in or have them go down to really create like a roof, right? Yeah. And so I thought those were great. I thought the fact that they had them on either side of the house and they looked the same was, speaking of some of these other houses that were very inconsistent, I liked the symmetry there. And I thought those pergolas were really nice and very practical.
They were nice. Now that we're talking through it, we've got this outside area here on our bottom floor, which would be perfect for a hot tub.
Perfect for a powered pergola.
And we have talked to a company about powered pergola, and the $3,000 I don't think would have covered the whole having two pergolas for sure. Definitely not
they
even
probably
one.
Got some deal from their.
Well, I mean, I think you apply. Maybe they were going to get a pergola and they applied the $3,000 to get the upgraded model with the power or something. But it was the full cost of those pergolas was not covered by the $3,000.
The nice thing about that, if you had them closed, theoretically, you could be out there cooking in the rain. Maybe not in a huge thunderstorm. And then they had and of course. This goes without saying. This is Mina and Vernon. Yeah. So their outdoor kitchen was a full kitchen.
A full kitchen.
I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a dishwasher there. But refrigerator, stove, the whole deal.
It was the whole shebang.
And they had and all around the counter for the outdoor kitchen was seating, right?
8 or 10 chairs.
8 or 10 chairs, which I thought was pretty nice. You could have people out there under the pergola while you were cooking, chatting, having a drink. And they just had stools there, so you could turn and take a look at the pool or whatever you wanted to. So I probably would have got swivel stools, but maybe that was a little over budget.
Yeah,
but I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, that is nice. I mean, I remember in Washington where we had the grill was outside the house, a little bit away from it, but was in an area that had so many trees and such like that that area really didn't get wet unless it was like really pouring. And so even when it was raining, I could go out and I could grill out. Here in Nashville, if it gets hot, I don't want to go out there. I mean, it's not covered. It's really close to the kitchen, but it's like if it's raining or it's really hot, I don't want to go grill. I mean, I've got other things I'd rather do to sweat than do something like that. So, having that outdoor kitchen covered is handy.
Yeah. And then the other pergola, they just put like a cornhole under it, which was kind of a miss, right? But you could I thought having the second pergola would be nice. You wouldn't necessarily have to have that as a cornhole place.
Yeah, and it was symmetrical. Yeah. So I got to give them points for the fact that, I mean, they could have taken that pergola and put it someplace else, but since it matched, since they had two that matched, I think having them oriented in that way, they actually looked like it was intentional, and it might have looked a little weirder if it was someplace else.
And they did have fans in both covered porches, which I think is important.
And 2 fans in the big area and 1 fan in the little.
Yeah, and, staging in the covered porches, blah, 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 double-sided fireplace. Everybody had that in the 2 TVs. Yeah. So, it was like I say, there was a lot of symmetry, a lot of uniformity in terms of what these teams did. Okay, so anything else that you want to add about Mina and Vernon? I really, given how they had more cohesion and they had 3 well-designed different areas, and I liked their pool area, I really thought they were in the running for the win.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job. I did. Yeah, I was. It is another one of those things where at the end of the first time we watch it and they announce the winner, and I sit there and I go, really? That's the winner? So, I mean, that was at least 2 episodes ago. That was the same sort of thing. Or when Kim and Chelsea won the other time, it was kind of like, really? This isn't making sense to me. But going back and watching it again really helped.
It did.
And watching it the third time, judging the third time, it really helped. So a little bit.
All right, so if we are boring you as much as this episode bored you, we're going to take a quick break.
The commercial should be really interesting.
Go grab a cup of coffee or something, and we'll be right back to talk about Scott and Brooke. So Scott and Brooke this week was much more focused on design and not as much in Brooke therapy sessions, which was kind of nice. They did try to steal the trees in their little hijinks part of the show that showed them trying to steal the trees from Taniya and Drew. But other than that, it was mostly them working on the yard.
Well, she did bring up that they could be playing footsie.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. When they made this big bench, it was big enough they could play footsie. But there is nothing going on between them. We have been assured.
Even I mean, I was out on the Rock the Block Facebook fan page, and somebody had put up a picture of Brooke in a bikini with Scott. That I don't think has happened.
AI strikes again. Okay, so Scott and Brooke's yard was the first of the two rectangular yards that we would have.
Right.
And Vernon probably would have been more comfortable with this yard because it was kind of shaped like a football field. It was a big, long rectangle.
Yeah.
Not a lot going on there. And the way they designed it, they really exacerbated the long rectangle look of the yard by designing the whole thing in two big strips. There was sort of a big strip where they had the pool and sort of rocks and landscaping like that, and then a big rectangular grass strip or turf strip that they put in between the pool strip and the house. So what did you think about their striping design?
I lived bad. I looked at it. I didn't like it at all. I just, at some point, I just started wondering, really, does the pool have to be the focus of the backyard? Because they all seem to want to make it kind of the center or like across from the living area. I guess that makes sense. I guess
the
there's
pools
nothing
are
wrong
usually
with that.
nice to look at and everything. It does make a nice focal point.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, they totally got in. I mean, they made a big deal of doing the tile work for the pool, which looked okay. I don't know that it really added anything. I mean, I think that they probably could have put that time and the money into something else. But yeah, having everything in a row and then everything in a row, and then even the back of the house is kind of in a row. I don't know. And then just thing after thing after thing, it just started to look a little goofy. Where they had the patio off the main bedroom, and then they had a seating area, and then they had that bar where the entry on the other side, and the bar was in the wrong place before, and had to move it. And they moved it to there. And I don't know. This just nothing about this backyard made sense to me.
I had two main problems with their backyard. My first problem is it did look kind of cluttery. They had a number of different structures, none of which matched, right? Yeah. Whereas Mina and Vernon had two pergolas that matched in materials. They were basically the same pergola in two different places. They had a big sort of tented roof area over their outdoor kitchen. Then they had a pergola in another place. Then they had this little bar that had different materials and a different look. So there was a lot going on out there, and it didn't seem cohesive.
Yeah, and I couldn't even tell that the outdoor kitchen was centered over that or inside of that roofed area. I mean, I assume it is, but it looked off center from the reviews that we were getting.
And it wasn't close to the house either, so you kind of had to walk out to that. Yeah.
No, I thought it was the saddest looking outdoor grilling space I'd ever seen in my life. It just, it's out there. It's just like there's not even a chair. There wasn't even like a chair near it. It's like, here's this out. I mean, it did. It looked sad. It just looked sad. I mean, I guess there's two chairs on the other side that you didn't see unless you were in the side yard, and then they had that little seating area. I don't know. It just looked sad.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the tile looked good on the pool, and they did have a big pool deck with an umbrella, but the umbrella was in the pool. It wasn't.
Yeah, it kind of looked like I kept thinking if it was open, I'd be hitting my head on it. I was getting in and out.
And I thought the thing that I didn't like is that the materials they used around the pool, like for the pool deck and the umbrella and everything, they had this kind of pretty tile that was kind of a yellowish goldish tone and then a sort of off-white tone. And they didn't match those colors with the things around the pool. So I think the nice effect that they were getting from that tile, they were kind of missing out on.
Yeah, not really cohesive.
Yeah. And then I thought they could have made the step up to the pool deck go all the way across the yard, and there was just like a little step up, and I just didn't think it looked great. And then on the other side of the yard, away from the pool, that's where they had the big bench that they could play footsie on. But it was just a wooden bench. There were a couple pillows. It didn't look very comfortable at all. Mm-hmm. And they had a fire pit there. I mean, I don't know. It just didn't look like a super comfortable place to hang out.
No, I guess the biggest reason and a disqualifier from being considered for the win, regardless of what they did in this week's competition, no fans on the patio. No fans, no fans. So if you're sitting out on either patio, good luck. Everybody else had fans. They missed the boat. They had some sort of goofy lighting fixture hanging from the ceiling. Mm-hmm. Maybe their fans didn't come in, and we just, one other, oh, gosh,
no, but
this
they
didn't
had
come in.
light fixtures. I mean, they deliberately put in some
true.
nice light fixtures. So they did think about those ceilings, but they weren't thinking about, it seems like it was rather cold when they did these designs, so they were all in their jackets. So maybe they just weren't thinking about how this would play in the middle of summer. I don't know.
Well, Scott being from Canada, he's not used to it being warm.
Who needs a fan outside?
Who needs a fan outside,
Yeah, probably put heaters up there.
Yeah, and as far as your bachelorette pad, they probably don't put fans, outside because they're not going to be, hanging out there. They're going to be downtown on Broadway or someplace. I don't know. So they're just having outdoor fans, on these patios. Just they forgot, but total miss. Total miss.
They did finish the side yard with sort of turf and stone, but there was no staging or anything there. So they got called out on that by the judge as well.
Yeah, I think, okay, they didn't do any staging, but I think that's fine.
I do too.
I think what they did was fine.
Yeah. I mean, at least they did something, as opposed to Taniya and Drew, who did not bother to work on that side
just try to close off. Hey, don't go over there.
Stay away.
These are not the side yards you're looking for.
Nothing to look at. Yeah.
Nothing to look at here.
Okay. All right. So let's take another pause, and we will come back with our final rectangular team. Okay, so it's time to talk about the second team that had a rectangular yard, which is Kim and Chelsea. So I will say one thing that I liked about their design right away is instead of basically putting a landing strip in the middle of the yard, they sort of had different shapes. So they had quite a big deck that extended out, and then they had sort of a second area next. So on the right side, they had the big pool that they won, and a nice big deck around that pool, which I liked. Then they had a big bench with a fire pit that also was sort of a patio that extended into the yard. Mm-hmm. And then they had some turf after that. And between the house and where the turf was, they had more of a natural landscaping where it was more like desert plants and what have you. Yeah. Which I think looked good. It did fit in with Las Vegas. It wasn't like the whole yard was a moonscape like we may have seen last year from one of our teams. But it did look, I thought it looked nice. A little bit of nature there, and then they did have the turf where you could hang out or kids could play on or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the that little pool area and the seating area, I was doubtful when I first saw it because they were talking about how they'd had the tile work done, stonework, whatever it was, and then they had the carpenter make those backs. And just looking at that, I thought, boy, I guess it looks okay. It looked like it'd be a little uncomfortable to sit on for a while, but when they put the cushions on there, I thought it was, it looked really nice. It really looked like it went with the fire pit. It was a very good look. Their backyard, I thought, did look uncluttered, very clean.
And they had a big bocce ball court. So right next to where the fire pit was, there was a bocce ball court that extended around the rest of the yard. And at first I was like, bocce ball court. But then I thought about it, and I thought, well, this is kind of a different feature. It would be fun. Anybody could play bocce ball. It's not something that obviously you can be skilled at it, but it's kind of like bowling. If you have no skill, you can do it, and you might get lucky and get a strike.
And I think it could not be a bocce ball court. It's just kind of this area. Now, they did have a little bit of not fencing, but a little wood around it to define the space. So, but yeah, you could use that for whatever. And again, it kind of looked like the natural landscaping, so it looked like it was intentional and belonged there. And I called out the fact that they only had one color of bocce ball, which it's not how it usually goes because you don't know whose ball is whom's. But maybe they had numbers on them or letters or something. I don't know. But.
Now, one thing that they did that was different from the other teams is rather than building an outdoor kitchen structure in the yard, they actually use part of the covered patio as their outdoor kitchen. So I think because they had closed off one wall when they did their giant banquette, they were able to use that wall for an outdoor kitchen. And I really
had
thought...
forgotten about the banquette. Thanks for reminding me.
It looked pretty nice, actually. They did a subway tile vertically there and had a really nice grill, nice cabinets, everything else. And so, it would always...
Fridge, though.
No fridge. Well, we don't believe they had a fridge because, as we know, Kim believes a house needs only one fridge.
One fridge.
And it should be in the pantry. So this was the biggest problem I have. If there indeed was no fridge in their outdoor kitchen, which we will be investigating when we're there, by the way. We're going to go and check out the fridge for sure.
Yeah, famously, Amy likes to pull on drawers and break them, like when we were in Cole and Chelsea's,
if I open a drawer, it shouldn't break.
You open the door and the door fell off. It's like, oh my gosh, this is even worse than it looked on TV. Oh, it's so cheap.
But anyway, we will be examining that because if there's no fridge there, as we know, they don't even have a fridge in their kitchen. Their only fridge is in their pantry. So if you were out on that covered porch and you wanted a Coke or a beer or something, you'd have to run through the whole kitchen into the pantry to get a drink. So I'm really hoping there's a fridge out there. So that potential problem aside, I thought, not everybody needs a giant built-in kitchen, and I thought what they had would be perfectly fine for grilling out and entertaining,
Yeah. One problem that I started thinking about with all of these homes is bathroom access for somebody using the pool. Because in our house back in Washington, you had to come in the house, or you had to go around the house and go through my office to get to the bathroom, or you had to go through the kitchen, down the stairs, around the corner to get to the bathroom. And meanwhile they're wet. So I mean, it's nice if somebody doesn't have to get out of the pool 10 minutes before they got to go, so they can dry off and whatever to go through your house in order to go to the pool. Your sister has a much better setup where they just kind of go in and there's a bathroom right there. But these houses, it looks like they're going to have to run through the great room, take a left, go by the laundry, maybe fold some clothes, and then figure it out. So I just was starting to wonder.
Some of them do have. I know at least one team put sliding doors in the main suite bathroom. So you would have access to that from the outside.
So maybe for the pool they let people go in and out of their bathroom for that, which is probably fine. I mean, if they're in your house, then they're in your house, right? So, but especially like you get a bunch of kids over and you just don't want them running through your house, getting everything wet just to go to the bathroom. So I started wondering about that when we were considering the outdoor shower without a drain. Something about not having a drain made me think about bathrooms.
Now, I think one of the reasons that Kim and Chelsea ended up winning, one, they had a very uncluttered, cohesive look that kind of looked like it fit in with the Nevada landscape, which was nice. Very nice pool area. And I think having the biggest pool, honestly, did help them. But another thing that they did is they deliberately thought about, where will the sunlight hit? Where do I have the best view? And they noticed that on the far side of the yard, past the bocce ball court, was where you really had the best view of the mountains. So they set up a big banquet table under really a nice covered, not really a gazebo, but some sort of roof structure that apparently was wired and lighted so that you could sit out there and have dinner and enjoy the view of the mountains, which I thought was really smart. They were thinking about how can we take advantage of this view, and they put that covered table out there. So that seemed to be another factor in their victory.
Yeah, well, I think having the covered space out there, we call it a pergola. I guess going back to a previous team, which I have to do. Remember the pergola that Scott and Brooke had with the cloths hanging down from it?
Yes. Why did they have those cloths? I did not like those cloths.
The only thing I could think of would be something to kind of try to block the sun.
Yeah, get the powered pergola like Mina and Vernon had. That would be much better than the cloth hanging from the pergola, in my opinion. I mean, some people might like the cloth. They might think it's romantic or whatever.
Yeah.
But To me, it wasn't the most practical choice.
But this pergola that they had the big seating area on, they showed the overhead view, and they were, just like 2x4s or something like that. I don't think you would get much respite from the sun there either, but at least it looked nice. I guess the judge thought that you could have a wedding reception there.
Yeah, but you would get some respite from the sun, and also the fact that it was lighted. So if you were out there at night,
it would look great. I think
the party went on past the sunset. You could have a lighted area, right? Whereas, who was it? Taniya and Drew would not even be able to cook at that point because there was no lighting over there.
No lighting in their backyard at all. Yeah. So, kind of, an interesting production fact, which I guess we'll need to remember to talk to when we have somebody from Landon Miller on, which I'll start talking to them, after the final episode. We can start arranging when that's going to happen. But, we saw this even on TV when they were in Utah about how they had these massive lights up. And so like at 2 a.m, it would look like it was the middle of daytime to work. And they had something of a shot this week of those houses at night, and I noticed they didn't have bunches of lights up. So I think if they were working into the night, I think it was probably pretty dark there because apparently they are in the middle of an established, residential area, as opposed to the luxury they had last season of being out in the middle of nowhere and starting the development.
Yeah, we'll have to find out about that when we're out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think so. Anyway, long story short, Kim and Chelsea won. They did. They had one problem with not a problem, but they just couldn't completely get away with their obsession with circuses.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yes,
yep, that had to be a Chelsea decision. I think Kim must have been the one running the show this week, but Kelsey was insistent about having her circus tent up above the pool.
Yeah, so the umbrella and the chairs next to the pool inexplicably were red and white striped, which really didn't go with the theme at all. I would have picked something much more tranquil. But
the nice thing was they were elevated so you can't miss them.
Yeah, so definitely sticking with their circus theme that they started with the festooning a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I guess I can see why they won. They had, like I say, a very clean design, and they made, good decisions about lighting and shade and nice pool area. I don't know. I might have given it to Mina and Vernon. I thought they did a great job, too. Who would you have picked for the backyard?
Interesting. Mina and Vernon spent the least amount, or supposedly, or were going to, with $20K, and Kim and Chelsea spent the most at $35K. I probably would have gone with Mina and Vernon. Mm-hmm. I get why Kim and Chelsea were able to put the outside grill on the patio, but given that, if you're cooking a lot of stuff, you're going to get a lot of smoke, which means it's going to get trapped. It's going to be kind of staining the inside the patio there. I think it is better to have the outside kitchen outside. Mm-hmm. I think Mina and Vernon did just a more comprehensive job of making a cohesive backyard. Although Kim and Chelsea, I think, did a good job too. So, yeah, I probably would have gone with Mina and Vernon. I guess we'll see when we see it in person. Yeah. This is out of 6 weeks, interestingly enough, out of 6 weeks, 3 weeks, the people that spend the most won. 3 weeks, the person that spent the most, so the team that spent the most did not win. And I guess it kind of depends on how you interpret week one, because week one, Kim and Chelsea and Scott and Brooke both spent the same amount, which was the most, and Kim and Chelsea lost or didn't win. Scott and Brooke did win. Which means heading into the final week, Scott and Brooke have the most money left with $40K. And then Mina and Vernon have the second most, so they can put in, they're going to be doing the landscaping curb appeal, front yard curb appeal, and the courtyard, which means what do we say? They're going to put a teppanyaki grill, and I think Mina and Vernon can probably put another Murphy bed in that courtyard. And then
call it a bedroom.
and somehow they got to figure out a closet, but they'll have another bedroom. But they've got $30K to work on that, and the other two teams, Taniya and Drew and Kim and Chelsea, have $25. So.
Taniya and Drew, it's so sad. They've spent so much money and gotten so little out of it.
Nowhere with it.
I just feel like they're so schizophrenic. It's like they don't know who they're designing the house for. First, it's like a luxury home with a speakeasy. Then it's a family home. Then it's just kind of all over the map.
Yeah,
so I think they're talented, but it's
I think if you could get the straight scoop from Drew, I think he believes they could have won if he had stepped up more and reeled Taniya in a little bit more in the first couple of weeks than they could have had, which one of our fans really thinks that walk-in fridge would have been the winning move. And I can't say that I disagree depending on the size. But yeah, they would have been in a better situation if Drew had been able to pull Taniya in the first 2 weeks when they were making decisions that obviously did not help them.
Yeah, but we'll see how it ends up next week with our judges, the Property Brothers. Oh, and we forgot to talk about the judge this week. So in a change of pace, the judge this week was not from a Real Housewives syndicate. Believe it or not. No. Instead of going with the Real Housewives syndicate, we had Danny Amendola, who is highly qualified to judge houses because he has been part of 2 Super Bowl winning teams.
So I guess he's got some design business too now, which I don't know. I was just trying to figure out. I guess he played for Texas Tech. I think it seems like most of what he's known there for is returning punts, kickoffs. Then, good for him. He stuck it out for a while. I guess he was undrafted, went to the Dallas Cowboys, was on their practice team, went to the Philadelphia Eagles for 2 years, was on their practice team, then got picked up on contract, and he played for St. Louis for 4 years, then the Patriots for 5. Which is, I'm assuming that's where he won his 2 Super Bowls, and then played for the Dolphins, the Lions for a couple of years, and Texans. So, being an undrafted player.
He had a long career.
And spending 3 years, on the practice squads, really kudos to him for finally making it, and playing professionally. As far as, as far as anything else goes, scroll. And I don't know. I guess he's a competitor with Dancing to the Stars.
There you go. Well, I think this year it's just been kind of odd. Most of the judges in prior years, they've had judges from other HGTV shows come in who you would expect to have more design experience.
Okay.
And this year, most of them have been reality TV stars, or in this case, a Super Bowl guy.
Okay.
Why are you saying okay every time?
Because he did. When Ty was talking to begin with, he was like, okay. It's just like, oh my gosh, can we get something more than I don't know that anything he said was wrong. And I thought
I didn't get a lot of insight.
Yeah. He did give the teams negative feedback, which was better than that Lessop's. Not the Love It or List It girl, but Luann de Lesseps, who I thought gave good feedback when talking to Ty, but talking to the competitors not so much. But I get that they want to bring these people in, but in the end, this is a design show. They have to take themselves seriously too.
You would like to think they'd bring in judges that have more design experience, because and no offense to Danny or some of these other people, but I kind of think you and I could do as good a job judging these houses as these people that they're bringing in from reality shows, because we know a little bit about design. We've done design projects. We do this podcast. Whatever. And I feel like that's about the level of qualifications that we're getting from the people who are coming in.
Are you saying that they should bring us in next season to be judges?
Wouldn't that be great? And this week's judge from the #1 podcast for Rock the Block, Amy and Steven.
From Talk the Block. Yay.
Oh, boy, that would up their viewership exponentially.
At least by everybody in our family. Most of whom don't watch the show, but if we were on, they would.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. We keep trying to recruit people to watch the show. I'm not sure how much we're doing on that. My brother did listen to our podcast and said it made him feel like he needed to watch the show, but I don't think he followed through on that. So, I don't know.
Anyway.
Maybe.
Well, hey, but we want to thank you for listening
to our
podcast. And again, we are the #1 podcast worldwide for Talk the Block. So
worldwide, right? Worldwide.
#1 Talk the Block
Canada.
podcast. Yeah, that's right.
Hey.
So anyway, and we are excited to be here next week when the final winner will be announced.
Yeah.
So we should get that podcast in a little bit early next week.
Yeah, we should be fine. The Mandalorian movie came out. We sat through half of one. And then the feeling fell in. And so we've seen The Mandalorian and the Grogu, and now school is out. So we should be able to get next week's podcast out a little bit sooner.
So we'll get next week's podcast out early, and then we'll be heading to Las Vegas to see the houses in person.
Yeah.
And we will be podcasting our opinions on what we see when we're actually there.
Yep. And then at some point we'll have somebody from Landon Miller on.
Yeah.
So we have a couple more podcasts to go.
So it's exciting. Who do you think's going to win overall, Stephen?
Well, final appraised value. I mean, that is the only thing.
4 kitchens and 48 bedrooms, 2 ADUs could have a good chance.
I can't see how they don't. I mean, they did mess up on the main closet, but not to the extent that adding 14 bathrooms and bedrooms is gonna. I guess we'll see next week, but I think they're going to be a tough team to beat with everything they've done. I mean, she came in with a plan to increase the final appraised value regardless of what the challenge was.
They may not have the most beautiful house, they may not have the most sellable house, but I think they are going to have the highest appraised value, which is what the final judging is all about.
Unless the judges come in and they just get so confused about what the house is supposed to do, they can't add the numbers. But I don't think these guys are going to have that problem.
The Property Brothers are pretty good at adding numbers. I think they've kind of locked it up. But but anyway, it will be fun to see the final. That's always a great episode. Yeah. And so in just a couple days till we'll know who the big winner is for season 7.
That's right.
So thank you very much for listening, and we will talk to you very soon on Talk the Block.